All right. Hello. Test, test, test. We've got some friends here for everyone who is joining us somewhere in the world, whether it be YouTube or Facebook or Twitter. I am excited to present Building a Tax Deferred Exit Strategy. By the way, coming out with the book, Building a Tax Deferred Exit Strategy, the proven playbook for unlocking your ideal wealth plan when selling assets of any kind for yourself or your clients. What's cool today is I got some really smart guys that are going to try to poke holes in the Deferred Sales Trust as I present this. And in fact, Jeff is going to say who he is, where he's from, and he's with some of his really smart folks with Jim, Bill, and Tim. And we're going to be kind of, let's just say, your guides today on everything the Deferred Sales Trust has to offer. So, hey, Jim, take it away to where you're from and what we're trying to accomplish here today.
Yeah, so it's Jeff. We're out of just west of Cleveland, Ohio, and we are in a capital, obviously opportunistic business here where we're trying to close deals as many as we can that make sense. And what we're really trying to do is build our education platform so we can work to close deals with sellers who may not be as sophisticated in the opportunities they have to defer their capital gains. It becomes a pretty material issue, particularly for folks who've held on to assets for a really long time. In particular, we have one who's been almost 70 years and really not too well educated in their opportunities to defer capital gains. So we're trying to learn more about this space and build a linkage along those lines.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And I think it's the right approach to take, Jeff, right? Which is we're in the business of solving problems, right? Whether it be commercial real estate operators, owners, brokers, financial advisors, CPAs, tax professionals. We're not in the business of selling the thing that we sell or just buying the deals that we buy. We're in the business of solving problems. So the more you can solve the problem for the other person on the other side, right? If you help enough people get what they want, you get everything you want. And if they've owned a property for 70 years, that means they have likely zero basis, a ton of appreciation, and potentially a ton of capital gains tax and or estate tax challenges. And so, Jeff, just so we know the rough value of the property and the rough basis, so we can keep that in mind for the case study here today.
Yeah, what we're anticipating a rough value of about $4 million. And just based on the indication of their accountant and the lack of depth that we understand, I assume their basis is actually zero. And because I do not believe they've had to invest much since the beginning, nor do I think they have received the advice to actually make sure they account for that and realize it while they're actually doing their taxes. So I honestly think the basis is likely zero, even though they've done some modest investment over time.
Yep. Yep. And even if it was a few $100,000 or something like, it's still so substantial that the gain is going to get hit with some big tax. And typically, we like to say that's 30 to 50% of that gain with state, federal, Obamacare depreciation recapture. Biden is proposing taking that from 20 on federal to 25, 26 to 28, which would make it 30 or 38 to 56 to 58. So something to keep in mind. So that is, with that being said, I'm going to share my screen, and then we're gonna go through this this presentation here, and I call it the number one secret to the biggest objection to a deferred sales trust, and it's a presentation that it's centered around an actual client of mine. His name is Steve. And Steve was selling his property, and he had a capital gains tax challenge. And so I actually listed his property here in Sacramento, California. And it's how I helped Steve to finally achieve release from retirement when I sold his $1.7 million multifamily building and helped him defer $350,000 while saving his 1031 exchange as well as his partnership. For those who don't know me, my name is Brett Swarts. I'm founder of Capital Gains Tax Solutions. And a legal disclaimer, I'm not a CPA. I am an expert in the Deferred Sales Trust, but this message is for educational purposes only, and it's only intended to provide an overview of how the Deferred Sales Trust works and can be implemented. Capital Gains Tax Solutions does not provide legal, tax, professional services, or advice. Each transaction, individual circumstances vary widely, and participants are strongly urged to seek independent legal, tax, and professional advice. In other words, bring your CPA in so we can help them get comfortable, okay? Bring them in early so that we can work alongside with them. And the CPA tax attorneys, which are my business partners, they will connect with them really closely and help them out. So here are some of the facts that are facing us. It's really important to understand this. According to the American Bankers Association, there's about $17 to $20 trillion that will pass from one generation to the next in the next 18 to 20 years. This is the baby boomers. This is known as the largest wealth transfer in the history of the planet. In fact, there's 77 million baby boomers in the U.S. alone, and every single day, about 10,000 of them are turning 65. As well, 1031 exchange timelines and restrictions with like-kind investment real estate, making finding a quality deal, even or a quality investment, very challenging, especially given the cap rates and everything that's going on right now. Also, 1031 exchanges are not eligible, by the way, for public stock, private stock, cryptocurrency, primary residences, or business sales. They're only actually eligible for investment property, which in this case, they could do a 1031, which they might, who knows, but not likely if they're pretty old. And so we have found over the years that your clients or these sellers that are selling this highly appreciated $4 million asset with a probably adjusted basis of zero, they are reluctant to sell because of the capital gains tax. And again, it's somewhere between 30 and 50% of their gain. So every single day, high net worth individuals, right? Primary home, business sales, stock sales, investment real estate, cryptocurrency owners, they pay hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars of capital gains tax when they don't have to, and they feel trapped and they're frustrated, okay? And a few things before we get too far in this presentation. It's okay to dream of helping your clients in this scenario, the person you're trying to sell from, you're trying to buy the property from, defer millions in tax and becoming their number one buyer. Like they want to sell you more deals because you solved the problem that no other buyer was solving, right? You provided a solution and a way to structure the deal in a way that could help them defer, $1 million, $1.5 million in tax on this $4 million deal, okay? Also, we believe it's now more important than ever to unlock new deals by providing new value and be in the business, again, of solving your clients, in this scenario, the seller's problems, right? Be proactive. And the more you can do that, the more you stand out. So who is this for? It's for anybody who is selling or has a client that has a highly appreciated business, investment real estate, failing a 1031 exchange, primary home, stock, cryptocurrency, or other assets subject to capital gains tax worth at least $1 million net proceeds, net of all debt and closing costs, and $1 million gain. In this scenario, we have that. By the way, Jeff, how much debt do they have on the property?
As far as we know, zero.
Okay, perfect. It's a very clean way to do this. So first of all, what is a deferred sales trust, right? And why would I need one? A deferred sales trust is, first of all, just an installment sale. What's an installment sale? Well, it's where a seller can carry back paper and become the bank and slowly receive payments and pay tax over time. It's kind of like an IRA. It's kind of like a 401k. It's kind of like a 1031. The difference is that instead of being an owner of those accounts, you are the lender to the trust, okay? In a traditional installment sale, Jeff could carry paper for Jim. Jim could put $1 down payment on a $4 million deal, and guess what? Jeff's only going to pay, today, he's only going to pay tax on that dollar that he received, right? But imagine Jeff financed Jim all $4 million. Well, guess what? Jeff's not going to pay any tax until he receives that part of that $4 million back. And that's exactly what an installment sale is. And that's what we do with the trust. We actually have it financed, and we'll walk through how that all works here in a minute. But the reason you need one is because of the capital gains tax. But more than that, I want you to think about Blockbuster versus Netflix, okay? And Blockbuster is, I don't know if you remember Tim or Bill showing up on a Friday night and you're excited, right? And your significant other has told you to get that movie, and you see it at the end of the aisle, and you're like, I'm going to get that movie. There it is. And you're walking in, and it's that cardboard is pressed out, right? So you know for sure it's behind it. So oh yeah, I got this. But 2 steps before you get there, someone walks and steps right in front of you and grabs that movie, and you're like, I was too late. So you're bummed out because you didn't get the movie, you failed, right? But then you get a second movie and you settle at that, but you drive home, you park, you put it in the thing, you got to rewind it, or it's the wrong movie altogether. You're like, oh my gosh, they put the wrong movie in the box. Or next thing, you have to return it back in 3 days. You forgot to return it in 3 days. You get a penalty, you get a fine. You forgot to rewind it. Well, that's like the 1031 exchange, guys. It's very restrictive, right? You got a 45-day window to identify. We call it the shotgun wedding. You got to get married in 180 days, right? It's got to be like kind. It's got to be equal or greater value. In other words, you got to have new toilets, new trash, new liability. You've got to have, you can't put it into diversified investment grade securities or passive investment real estate or hard money lending or ground up development. In other words, you have to keep all your eggs in one basket, right? You have to go apply for a new loan versus Netflix, right? Very seamless. The movie's never checked out. You don't have to get in your car to go anywhere. You have to pay some ongoing monthly fees, right? Well, that's like the Deferred Sales Trust. What's really unique about it is it doesn't require like-kind investment real estate. You have unlimited timing. In fact, the best deal for this was a deal in 2008 where a gentleman sold a Minnesota property for $20 million. They call it the Monday morning quarterback. He had a sense that 2008 was coming. He didn't know how hard it would be for people, but he said, you know what? I'm either going to pay the tax or I'm going to do this Deferred Sales Trust thing. But I am not overpaying for this 1031 and a shotgun wedding. Forget about it. So he puts the money into the trust. 5 years later, that property is foreclosed on. And the bank calls him up and says, hey, you know that property you sold 5 years ago to that crazy 1031 buyer out of California? He said, yeah. Well, we just foreclosed on it and we're just curious. Do you want to buy it back from us? He's like, well, maybe. What's the price? They said 60 cents on the dollar. So that sounds like a pretty good deal. So he had the funds that were in conservative investment grade securities, liquid, available, out of debt, just waiting for him to pounce on a deal. And he was able to purchase back with the trust in a unique way that we do this, all tax deferred at 60 cents on the dollar. Now my brain exploded when I heard this. And I said, no, you can't do that. 45, 180. No, that was Blockbuster. This is Netflix, okay? And so I'm going to teach you now on this how this whole thing works, but that's really the one of the main things. There's no timing restrictions. It can go into like kind or no like kind. There's no equal or greater value. You can get a new depreciation schedule. You can move funds outside your taxable estate. In other words, you'll never go back to Blockbuster once you understand Netflix, okay? So this is also my goal for this presentation is really to help you understand why the Deferred Sales Trust is the number one growth strategy you need to be focusing on in 20. Actually, I got to update this. 2022, also 2021. How to grow your business with the Deferred Sales Trust. Even if you don't have any capital gains tax deferral knowledge or a ton of time, I don't want this to be a distraction, right? I want it to be a tool so that you know who to lean on, which is our company, right? And then how to use the Deferred Sales Trust to drastically increase your sales and conversions immediately. And as a quick background, I started out at a company in my real estate career at a place called Marcus Millichap, and I learned about 1031 exchanges, Delaware Statutory Trust, TICs, multifamily investing, brokerage, negotiation, value add, underwriting, all that cool stuff. I've closed 1031 exchanges. I'm a California real estate broker still. I'm with EXP Commercial. We've done Delaware Statutory Trust, Deferred Sales Trust, and I've done a bunch of that stuff. I've been featured on a ton of media places, really, really smart people. One of the ones I'm most proud of is Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank. I was on their podcast, and he's going to be in my book, by the way, which is pretty cool, coming out here pretty soon. But it wasn't always that way, guys. I wasn't the guy, Leonardo DiCaprio, just cold calling and closing people on the first deal. In fact, I was one of the guys in the back scratching my head. Like, how the heck are these people closing these deals? You see, it was a 100% sink or sink commissioned real estate sales job, and I was just happy to be there to be able to absorb from some of the most smart guys in the brokerage industry in Northern California. And so that's how I began. I was watching and learning, and this is 2006, and I just started to get some momentum. And I'm newly married, and I just graduated from college. I'm all excited. I had my basketball scholarship. I had paid for school. I had succeeded in everything I was doing until this, right? And it felt like a ton of bricks, like just crashed into a brick wall. And I went from making a little bit of money to like nothing overnight. I don't know if you guys have ever been in a situation where you're so scared, you're not sure how you can provide for your family. That's where I was, okay? And you're living with your brother. That caused me to shift everything and do what every good entrepreneur or real estate wannabe does. You get a side hustle and you do whatever steps it takes to win and succeed. And so that's what I did. I humbled myself. I marched down to Cheesecake Factory and I got a side hustle job, nights and weekends serving cheesecake. Okay, I had 2 degrees and a minor. I was trained for a couple years at Marcus Millichap, and all of a sudden I'm finding myself scrambling to keep the lights on. I moved in with my brother into a small condo. My wife and I moved in with my brother and our baby. And people were like, "What are you doing? Go get you a real job. What are you doing? You're never going to make it commercial real estate." And I said, I love commercial real estate. I love it. I love it. I want to grow in it. I think it's my career. I think it's my calling, but I know it's tough right now, but I'm going to grind it out. So that's what I did for 70, 80-hour weeks, nights and weekends. By day, I'd make cold calls. By night, I would work cheesecake and back and forth. And it was during this turmoil. And how many of you know that during challenging times, you can find things that are kind of like diamonds in the rough? And this is where I found the Deferred Sales Trust. My manager brings in a gentleman who's my business partner, played for the 49ers. His name is Robert. He's amazing. He starts telling me about this Deferred Sales Trust. And he starts talking about Netflix. And we're going, no, it was only Blockbuster. We're the Navy SEAL Marcus and Millichap 1031 guys. No, guys, there's Netflix. It's coming. It's here. We've been doing it for years, but you guys don't know about it. And I sat there saying, if this guy is true, if what he's saying is true about Netflix, this will change everything. And there's about 30 of us in the Marcus and Millichap office. Only a couple of us actually kind of really took action on it. But I just started taking action. I just started to learn about it. I started to cold call people with it. I started to meet people. All of a sudden, my business starts to grow. I start to actually get more opportunities to list properties and serve more people and really talk about the issue, which was the 1031 exchange was not our clients' friends in 05, 06, 07. It was their enemy because they were overpaying for property that they knew they were overpaying for a lot of them, but they felt trapped, right? And this Deferred Sales Trust was the way to get out of that. And so fast forward, my business thrived. I've closed a ton of deals. Now I speak and coach all the time about this. Okay. My wife and I, we have 5 kids. We live in Roseville, California. And that's really after 10 years, I discovered the hard way. And I want to teach you guys the easy way. Okay. And so by the way, if you've been struggling or if your sellers of assets have been struggling, this is probably why. We talked about the perfect storm of highly appreciated baby boomers who have more wealth transferring ever. It's happening right now. Second, valuations are all-time high in stock market, real estate market, cryptocurrency, all-time highs. Okay. By the way, it's not your seller's fault. It's not your guys' fault. Your CPA doesn't know about the Deferred Sales Trust likely, or they've kind of heard about it, but they haven't had somebody who's been in the trenches that's closing deals every single week and has been over this thing for 10,000 hours and has become an expert in this. They don't have that. They haven't met me and my team yet. Okay. Also, 1031 exchange companies don't want you to know about this. Your brokers don't want you to know about this. In fact, my broker at Marcus and Millichap, who brought in the gentleman, he was fired a couple years later during the crash. And the new broker who came in told me not to talk about it. And I'm going, what are you talking about? Why would I talk about it? These people are losing half or all of their wealth and having to crawl out of all this mess because of the 1031. How can I not talk about it, right? And so, but they don't want you to know that. They want to keep a lot of people in this 1031 race and overpaying for properties. By the way, I love a 1031 when there's a value add opportunity and you can find a deal, go buy it. But a lot of people are in their 60s or 70s. They don't know and they don't want to know. They don't want to start over with new toilets, new trash, new liability, right? And that's what they've been forced to do for the past 10 years. They've been forced to hire a broker, 5 to 6 minutes per kilo, sell a property, 0.5% closing costs, hire attorneys, hire a new 1031 qualified intermediary, identify 3 properties in 45 days and close in 180, apply for a new loan, right? Buy a property, take on more debt. Lots of times if they have debt to replace, then they want to. Their upfront costs could be hundreds of thousands of dollars per deal, plus 6 months just to sell the property and buy a new property. It's endless amount of stress for people, which leads into, well, Brett, why don't they just do a 1031 Delaware? I'm glad you asked. I call this the Hollywood video to Blockbuster, right? It's the local video store that's even more challenging than just the 1031. Why? Well, you're not liquid. The funds are tied up for 7 to 10 years. You're not diversified. Fees are as high as 14%. They're hidden in there. You ask the question, how much of my dollar is actually hitting the real estate? And most of them are around like 85 cents of every dollar is actually hitting the real estate. These people are amazing, though. I mean, they're the first-class operators. They're really smart people. I've done the Delawares. There's nothing wrong with these deals. It just ask yourself, is this really what the client wants, right? No control, no liquidity, no diversification, high fees. These deals are known as, if you look up 7 deadly sins of a Delaware statutory trust, not value add, meaning they're typically very beautiful brochure turnkey properties with not a lot of juice to squeeze on it. And they're paying about 5%. Okay. Our parents taught me to sell high and buy low, not sell high and buy higher and give up all my control, right? And that's where and all liquidity and no diversification. And so now there are some positives for sure. These are the non-recourse loans. Again, they're turnkey, beautiful property with Class A locations and tenants and first-class operators. And there's also no more new management. You don't have to do it. They do it all. No leases, no you don't have to deal with all the stuff. They deal with all that. I call this peaceful mailbox money. It's kind of like a bond or sleepy real estate capital. It also can solve mortgage over basis, which is a whole nother part we don't have time for, but that's the Delaware. The other DST, okay, the Blockbuster DST, okay? All right, so I'm going to walk you through, it's not going to take 30 minutes, but how to deliver a transformational exit plan. Here's our few deal stories. This is Steve. By the way, he grew up in Napa. His parents owned over $30 million of multifamily properties, value add. They were real estate professionals and agents. They were value add. They were active. 1031 exchange is something they talked about at the dinner table. And they call Steve Skeptical Steve. And it's a compliment because he's cautious and skeptical and really, really smart. And he says, Brett, I can tell you it wasn't easy. I had to really dig in. I had to somehow pivot and trust someone else. I'm a very skeptical person, and my wife is even more skeptical, okay? And they did this. We saved his failed 1031 exchange. We had a deal lined up. He was trading 7 units for $1.7 million for 21 units. The deal fell apart. Partnership fell apart. We saved the deal, and that was really amazing, which is cool. Here's an $8.3 million deal in Palo Alto we did for a client. He was the #1 Keller Williams agent for like 30 years in Palo Alto. We did it for his house. Here's a multifamily sale complex in Colorado for $5.1 million. What's unique about this deal was it's a $25 million sale, client, $5 million sale, and they were able to move the funds outside their taxable estate, which eliminated the estate tax of 40%, what the 1031 does not do. We just did a couple Bitcoin sales. Total now $12.5 million over 3 sales, and it works for Ethereum, Bitcoin, or cryptocurrency. Okay, so that's really cool, and it's a great way because the 1031 doesn't work for cryptocurrency. We did a business sale out of Alabama for a client who's using some of the funds to build 70 multifamily units in Tennessee, all tax deferred. There's another $7.9 million sale. We saved a failed 1031 exchange in Santa Cruz. The list goes on and on. We can go through it. Here's some syndicators like you guys that own over 2,500 units. They did $36 million in sales with us last year alone for a couple multifamily complexes that they sold. They used their GP positions. And so how does this whole thing work? And I want to walk you through the #1 objection, right? Brett, this sounds amazing, but I need my trusted advisor to say yes before I move forward. I just don't understand why my CPA doesn't know about this. And I want to tell you a couple deal stories to help you gain credibility. Again, even if you have no DST or tax deferral experience. And the first one has to do with this gentleman named David Young. And how many of you have heard of PIMCO before? PIMCO, anybody? So one of the largest money managers in the world, most respected, and a guy named Bill Gross. Anyone hear of Bill Gross before? Okay, Bill Gross, really smart. Well, Bill Gross' right-hand man was David Young and about 4 other guys. And they took PIMCO from $80 billion to $1.2 trillion over like a 15-year period. They all retired. David and his team get a little bit bored after retiring for this big payday, and they form a group called Anfield Capital out of Southern California. And guess what? They get approached with the Deferred Sales Trust about 3.5 years ago. And like most people, they're very skeptical, right? And you can imagine these guys, they're managing money for some of the large endowments, sovereign wealth, and pension funds. They get approached from people all the time trying to sell them their tax thing to get access to their clients. So they're very cautious, right? And I interviewed David, and I asked him this question. I said, David, like what is it about the Deferred Sales Trust? Walk me through your due diligence on this. He goes, well, Brett, first of all, we're economists and we're money managers, and we help financial advisors help their clients, ultra high net worth. So by nature, we do a lot of due diligence. And by nature, we're very cautious, okay? Very conservative on our approach, okay? And he said, we did a 2-year due diligence. We talked with the banks. We had our attorneys look at it. We flew back and met with the attorneys. We went through this exhaustively, and we found out 2 things at the end of this research. One, the person who created it, he's a tax attorney out of the Midwest. He's the smartest person we've ever met. By the way, he's the smartest person I've ever met too. Number 2, we are all in. We'll become a part of the Inner Circle or the Deferred Sales Trust New Asset Allocation Advisory Team. And so this is really the question right now. I'm just going to post it to all you guys, okay? So take yourself off mute so I can hear you if that's okay. So Jim, Jeff, Bill, and Tim, here's the question for you right now. If it's good enough for David Young and his legal team after 2 years of due diligence, exhaustive research on the deferred sales trust, talking with clients, talking with the banks, looking at the allocations, looking at the investment opportunities. Is it good enough for you and your legal team?
It validates
the biggest of the big guys right there. If they've
That
done all the
validates
diligence
it.
for you, right? You're riding their coattails.
You got it. They're much smarter than me, right? I mean, these guys are, I'm a humble, real estate guy. Grew up in a family of rentals and construction, and Marcus Millichap, learned about the deferred sales trust, 1031s and stuff. But David Young, I mean, this guy is, I think he sits on, he's a professor of economics at, I think it's USC or UCLA. And I mean, he's brilliant. And in fact, you can hear his whole story. You can go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com and you can listen to David tell his story. And you can get on the phone and call him. I can probably call him right now. He'd probably answer his phone, right? He's great. He loves to share his story, right? And this is the biggest thing to understand, right? That the people who helped us get there, right, to get us from the first 0 to 4 million are typically not the people to help us exit well or get to 4 to 10 million or 10 to 20 million or 50 to 100 million or 100 million to a billion. It's going to take you as the seller or you as the business professional being open-minded enough to say, I'm going to trade the joy of being right or having my CPA think that he knows all the answers to all the questions for the joy of what's true, right? And leaning on and being open-minded enough to see who is it that I can lean on with experts who have done due diligence already. And it's right here available that you can talk with, pick up the phone, talk with our clients, do the thing. By the way, thousands of closes, billions under management, a dozen no-change IRS audits. It's literally batting 1,000. But guess what? It's tough for people, right? And you can understand this because they're selling their asset for $4 million and you're asking them to trust somebody named Brett on a podcast, on a YouTube channel about millions of dollars of their net worth and their clients. Now, here's the good thing. We work with third-party financial advisors, right? So it's not just trusting Brett. And then, of course, there's the tax legal team, and there's the bank, and there's David Young, and there's a lot of other people, and the funds never move without their signature or their approval, and there's all these checks and balances in place and all of these things, right? But the point is, the earlier we can educate, the more likely they are to be able to digest the know, like, and trust factor, right? The more we can educate and have them, send them this webinar and have them watch it, right? The more they can start to become believers, right? And not just skeptics. But you can't blame them for being skeptics. I was a skeptic too. I looked at Robert when he presented in 2009 saying, this is crazy. But I was open-minded enough to say, you know what? I'm going to give this thing a shot. I'm going to see if it's really real. I'm going to talk with the clients. I'm going to start sending deals, which leads into the second story, okay? The second story, which is this. This is Cal Garvin. Now, Cal is a financial advisor, okay? And for 35 years, he's in Los Angeles area. He's one of the most respected top LPL advisors, and he's built a multi-million-dollar business, okay? And he wants to sell and move out of California. This is 15 years ago, so he's way ahead of the curve, right? Which is everyone else moving out right now. He's like, we want to get to the Midwest. We want to get out of here. We're done with California. But my practice is in Southern California, and if I sell, I'm going to get hammered with capital gains tax. And like a lot of people, he gets approached with a lot of things. Guess what? He gets approached with the Deferred Sales Trust. And he goes, this is too good to be true. This is too good to be true. I'm not sure this thing is legal, but here's the thing. He's the really smart guy, but he'd be the first one to tell you his wife is even smarter. In fact, she worked for the Secretary of Treasury as like a G4 attorney. It's like a G, like a 5-star or 4-star general. Like that's kind of like this equivalent that she was way up there for over 20 years. In fact, there were certain times where she's with the IRS and they're looking at stuff that people shouldn't be doing. And so he goes home one day. He's like, honey, I got this thing that I heard about. And I'll tell you what, if you say no to it, I told you when we got married, I'll never, never, never do something that you don't feel good about. But if you look at this thing, what it means is we get 10 years back of our life, meaning what our practice would have to sell for after tax would take me 10 years to build it up to. Versus if this thing works, we can sell today and pre-tax roll it all into the Deferred Sales Trust. He goes, but if you don't feel good about it, I don't mind. I'm going to go back to work. No problem. But would you do me a favor? Would you take this and go and look at this thing with your expertise and the people that you know and you work with? So he said, sure, honey, I'll do it. I don't know if you guys seen the show Suits. Anyone see the show Suits? Okay. And there's like Mike is the young guy and there's like, is it Harvey? Anyone see that? It's a really cool show. Anyways, there are these big power attorneys and they walk in with their papers and they like slam them on the table. Like it's like at the end of like the episode, like see, and they like, they do like the lawsuit and it's always like this, dramatic thing. Anyways, He goes, it was like slow motion, Brett. She came in through the door. It's like a movie. She opens the door, and I'm sitting in my home office. And she comes in, and she puts the papers on the table. And she didn't slam them on the table, but she said 2 words to me that changed our lives forever. She says, "It's legit." He goes, "That's all I needed to hear." I went from too good to be true to not sure it's legal to 100% all in. I said, "Cal, will you come on my show and tell me all on this podcast?" He goes, "No, Brett, but anyone who wants to call me, I will talk to them." Okay. Who's a serious candidate that's working with you and Robert? No problem. And so here's the question, Jim, Jeff, Bill, and Tim. Same question as David Young question. If it's good enough for Cal Garvin, who's been in the business for 35 years and has a wife who's a G4 attorney who reviews this thing and they do the deal for their actual sale. And by the way, he also told me this. He goes, "Brett, but before they call me, here's what I want you to tell them. Tell them this. Do you think my wife and I, her 20 years in the government, my 35 years in financial finance, do you think we would ever put our financial legacy and our future at risk with something that we didn't believe was 100% legal and it worked?" I said, "No, I don't think so, Cal." He goes, "Yeah, make sure you tell them that before they call me." Okay. But so Jim, Jeff, Bill, and Tim, if it's good enough for Cal Garvin and his wife, is it good enough for you? Just give me a thumbs up or give me a yes. All right.
Absolutely.
I got thumbs up, and you can call Cal. Okay. So these are the 2 stories. Okay. Everything else aside, the biggest thing people are going to say is it's too good to be true. My CPA hasn't heard about it. I don't think it's legal. They're going to look up some blog that some 1031 exchange person puts out and tries to tell you it's not legal because they don't want you to know about it. They're going to try to poke holes in this, but literally it's perfect. Okay. It's perfect. And it really becomes easy after this. Okay. It becomes clear and consistent that the track record is perfect. Thousands of closes, billions under management. There's lifetime audit defense, by the way, built in for every single deal. Okay. And it's works as long as you work with professionals and know what they're doing, which is what we do here at Capital Gains Tax Solutions. So what is the step? Well, step 1 is just map out a wealth plan with me, your client, or the seller, and any of our trusted advisors, okay? And the funds are held at TD Ameritrade, typically, or Charles Schwab. Funds you can see 24/7. The funds never move without their signature or approval. And that's simply just clarifying what and how they want the funds invested. Step 2 is just to sell their asset or go into escrow with you. Step 3 is to fund the trust, right? Step 4 is to allow them to enjoy their life more, right? Whatever that means to them. These trusts are set up in 10-year increments. They're 10-year promissory notes. They can renew every 10 years for 10 years. And they can pass it to their kids. They're set at typically about 8%, depending on their risk tolerance. It could be 7 or 6 or 5, net of all recurring fees. And they can also cash out and pay the tax whenever they want, right? It's their money. They can pay the tax. How this whole thing works is very simple, okay? It's simply going to take parties to cooperate. So this is the third-party trustee. This is our company, Capital Gains Tax Solutions. I hope I'm I have that good gray hair here soon on the side, look sophisticated like this guy. And we'll call this the mobile home park or RV sellers $4 million sale. So it's a $4 million sale, guys. They have a 0 basis and they have 0 debt. Okay, and they're looking at, I don't know, what's going to put $1.5 million of tax. So that we're trying to solve for this $1.5 million. So what we're going to do is they have $4 million here to sell. Instead of selling to the cash buyer for $4 million, which is you guys. Now you guys can get a loan or whatever, it doesn't matter. Just you need to come with cash, right? Instead of selling to you directly and paying tax, they're going to just sell it to the trust for $4 million. And the trust is going to turn around and sell it for $4 million. And guess what, Jeff? If they bought it for $4 million, the trust did, and sold it for $4 million, how much gain does the trust have? 0. So how much tax does the trust owe on 0? 0, right? Now this $4 million goes into the trust. They get back a promissory note for $4 million. So they take a 0 down payment. They carry back a $4 million note. So Tim, if they carried back $4 million note, 100% seller carryback, how much of this 1.5 is triggered today if they receive 0 today? The answer is 0. Tim's putting up a 0. Thank you, Tim.
0.
Yep, there it is. And so the smoke clears. You guys get title the same way you would have, so you're gone. There's $4 million sitting in the trust, and it's set to pay them back at 8%, typically net of fees, over 10 years. Most of the clients will take interest-only payments. I owe a 5 or 6%. They could take more or less. They could take 12%. They could take 2%. It's pretty flexible there. They just pay tax on what they receive. They get a 1099. They pay interest on the tax that they receive on interest payments. If they dip into principal, they pay capital gains taxes. So I'm going to pause here. Any questions on this page, guys?
Why is there no tax at the sale from them to their trust?
So the key here is the trust bought it for $4 million and sold it for $4 million. It's a separate entity, right? It's not their trust, okay? They lent the money to the trust. That's the first thing. They became the secured lender. They did a seller carryback, right? If they did own the trust, Tim, it'd be taxable, right? Or if they sold it to a party that was related to them, or a son or a daughter or a friend, or something where they had too close, too close, it was taxable. So it's third party. So who owns the trust? Capital Gains Tax Solutions. It's a third-party trust that's set up for them, never commingle with any of my accounts or business accounts. It's a new entity, has a new EIN, and it only does business with them. So we have all those things in place, okay? And that's the key. That particular trust, we can call it the RV DST 2022 trust. Bought it for $4 million, sells it for $4 million, and since they haven't received any cash at closing, they're in a tax deferral state until they start receiving payments. Does that make sense, Tim?
Yeah. Okay.
You mentioned Brett, cash buyer. So, and you did say you can bring, if we have to go financing or something like that, whatever, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, they're funding that full amount, whether it's our portion of cash and then a loan. Is that correct?
Exactly. And it could be a mixture too. They could finance you for like $1 million and $3 million could go in there, and then they could roll that $1 million into there. So it doesn't exclude them from doing a seller carryback, but the cleanest way to do it, and typically what you guys want, Bill, because financing is at 3 or 3.5%, whatever, right? You guys don't want the seller carrying back at 5 or 6. You guys want to get 3.5, unless there's some reason hair on the deal where you can't get the LTV in place. So there's a number of ways to skin the cat, and this is part of what we help you do.
So one of the pushbacks we received here is I don't want other people having control of my money. So just some thoughts on that, because what the concern is they would not have, I think, certainly Jim can speak to this, investment decisions, other capabilities on their end to quote control their money. So if you could kind of help us understand that from your line.
That's the biggest misconception of the deferred sales trust, besides it's too good to be true or it's not legal, right? So once you get past the legal part, it's basically, how do I maintain the control? Now, you do not have what's called unilateral control. Okay, what's unilateral control? I can walk into the bank and be like, "Hey, that $4 million, let me cash it out." Right? You have what's called secure lender control, which is different for people because a lot of them have never been a lender before, right? But just like your bank, if they loan you money, if you don't pay them back, if you don't follow their guidelines, they can foreclose. It's the same thing we have with the trust, right? So the trust is set to pay 8% compounding day one. It's the first thing. At any point it's not producing this amount, they can foreclose. Okay. Second, all investments must be approved by them. Okay. All investments. So nothing moves without their approval. Now, it's not unilateral approval. It's also the trustee. That's my role. I'm a third-party friendly trustee, right? And my role is to work with the financial advisor, work with the real estate investment groups to try to earn this 8%. We are part of the team. We're not an adversary. We're like a broker in a lot of ways, like a financial advisor in a lot of ways, but we're not playing that financial advisory role. We are the trustee working with these other advisors. I'm kind of like the offensive coordinator, but you're the CEO. You must approve of everything. So it's a team effort here. If it was unilateral control, yeah, it would be taxable, right? But it's not unlike what a qualified intermediary does. What does a qualified intermediary do? It says, hey, the $4 million goes to the QI, and you lost control of the $4 million until you do certain things in certain orders, right? So think of it kind of like a long-term 1031 company, kind of like an IRA company too, or a 401k company. These are all things where there's custodians and people over the top of it to make sure that you're following the guidelines and not stepping out of bounds. So for example, though, a lot of clients want to go back into real estate. So the first question you want to ask them is, well, where do you want to invest the funds? Like if you were to just pay tax on this $4 million, where would you invest the funds? I put a little bit in the stock market, a little bit into real estate, a little bit into cash. Okay, why don't we do the exact same thing on those 3 buckets, 4 buckets, whatever, except with $4 million instead of, two and a half. So, okay. And then the other thing could be, we have local financial advisors in most places. And if we don't, we can establish relationships to get that as well. So I'm also is a financial advisor we're working with, security advisor, who's also a part of this. So that making sense? Is that answering the questions there?
It is. Yeah, we're just trying to make it as simple as we can for them. And I think it probably, to your earlier point, is going to take some convincing of their CPA who they've had a relationship with for years. Because I think that's where they're getting some of the skepticism. So we're just trying to arm ourselves with the ability to talk them through that scenario.
Exactly. Yeah. And we're happy to talk with their wealth advisors too, financial advisors, commercial brokers, right? All of it. Give them the evidence, right? And deal stories always help, right? And when the David Youngs, my other clients that tell their deal stories, you can go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com and see clients actually tell their stories, and then have those advisors come on and talk with us. That's always helpful. Any other questions, guys, on this page?
No, the deal story is definitely going to help. And then the fact that TD Ameritrade or Schwab, I think that'll be, a little bit more calming for mid 60-year-old folks that are taking this over.
Exactly. They always have 24/7 access to view the funds online too. So just like they would otherwise. So what your clients or people who sellers used to have to do: stay in their primary home, not sell a business, stock, cryptocurrency, or a property, overpay for a 1031 property. Now they have more. They used to have to do more time, more energy, more debt, more employees. They used to have to become the lender for a single buyer, which is not diversified, not liquid, stay in debt, or just pay the tax. So it's a new way. We believe it's the best way or a better way. And so hopefully who here thinks that the Deferred Sales Trust can be transformational for the sellers that you're trying to serve and trying to buy from. And it's really, really simple. List and sell, defer the tax, fund the trust, invest, okay? So if this sounds like something you want to help your clients or sellers out, escape feeling trapped by capital gains tax and earn more listings or win more deals, then let's talk. You can go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. And again, $1 million net proceeds, $1 million gain. You can also join our mastermind. It happens every Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 1 p.m. Eastern, where we bring on clients, CPAs, financial advisors, and it's Deferred Sales Trust University. It is focused on cryptocurrency and real estate deals right now. And you can bring all your questions up, bring that seller to an environment where it's a classroom, right? Have them watch these YouTubes. Education creates the know, like, and trust, and education empowers people to make decisions. If we're expecting people to make decisions at the closing table, it's not likely we're going to close it, right? But if we can educate and bring them along for the ride, we can help more people defer tax. That make sense, guys?
Just one other quick point of clarity, if I can, Brett.
Sure.
So 10-year note, how long technically under deferred sales can you defer paying the government? You got to pay them eventually, but when is the ultimate end date? I've heard 20 years. Is that correct?
No, every 10 years you can renew for 10 years, and you can renew for 10 years, and renew for 10 years, and you can pass it to your kids, and they can renew for 10 years, and they can keep it going. So now you're going to be paying tax as you receive payments immediately, right? So you're getting a 1099, you're paying tax on that. So the government's getting their money. The principal, though, just like in a 1031, you don't pay tax on that principal until you finally cash out of the 1031, right? With the Deferred Sales Trust, it's the same thing. Until you dip into that principal, you're not paying tax. And we have clients dip into principal, right? It's their money. So to answer the question, it's just when you receive it.
You just would have to strike a new note at the end of 10 years.
It's not even strike a new note. You just refinance. It's
refinance it?
Yeah,
Okay.
It's just like a refinance.
Got it. And what happens if you don't? If
then the balloon payment gets paid to you, and then you pay the tax.
And then you pay the tax. Okay. Just making sure.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned, Brett, if there's a different target besides, if 8% is the normal target, and you mentioned 12%, I mean, is there a rate of return that they can kind of come up with that you'll end up having to take more risk or move things around in different ways to get to that rate of return?
Yeah, great question. So everything is mathematical, and it's before anything goes anywhere, it's measured by what's called a risk tolerance questionnaire. So they will fill it out. If they're a married couple, they fill it out, and it gets scored. And that score will put them in kind of a bucket of 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. Net of fees is the goal, not a promise, not a guarantee. So yes, based upon that score and their overall financial plan and income needs and debt and all these things will determine how and where the funds are invested. Okay. Now, to get higher percentages, they can go back into their own deals, tax deferred, and get more of the upside there, which is a really cool part of it, right? Remember I told you the story of the guy who sold high, bought low, right? And then so you can partner with the trust and you can buy real estate whenever you want. You can do ground up development, do hard money lending, and you can get the majority of that upside, which is really, really cool. And you can be an active GP. So it's not something where you're just completely passive on this thing. That's the difference between us and the Delaware, is you can still go buy whenever you want, when you want, if you want, right? And you can also be passive into passive real estate stuff or stock market stuff. So we kind of give you that whole flexibility there. All right, guys, I think we're at kind of the bottom of the hour here, close. Any last questions before I let you go? If not, we got thumbs up. Okay, guys. So hopefully you feel more confident with what you're doing, right? Remember, Mastermind every Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 1 p.m. Eastern. Go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com to learn more about that, to register for free for that. Look for the new book, everybody. Building a Tax-Deferred Exit Strategy, the proven playbook for unlocking your ideal wealth plan when selling assets of any kind for yourself or your clients. And I'm so excited for Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank, Neil Bawa, Michael Blanc, Kevin Bupp. Who else do we have in here? Dan Hanford, David Young has got a chapter. So many others that are so smart. And I want you guys to go out and get this book. It's coming out in about 30 days on Amazon, so look for that. And thank you for everyone for listening, wherever you might be listening to this. And we will talk to you very soon. Okay. Goodbye, guys. See you guys.
Thanks, Brett.
Thank you.